Hebrews, Hebrews. This is our Prophets of Awakening. This is our evening Sabbath class, the 8th of October. We were dealing with the book of Judges, kind of pick up and kind of finalize what we were talking about this morning. You can check out our videos on Prophets of Awakening channel. There's a lot of information given. The videos will connect dots for you and bring you into the truth of the Hebrew scriptures, which is the Tanakh. If you understand the information that is being presented, like, share, and subscribe to Prophets of Awakening channel, and hit the notification button. It'll be greatly appreciated. And for those that don't know, this is a non-Messianic channel. We deal with the Tanakh, which is the Old Testament, so-called Book of Remembrance, and the Torah, first 5 books of the Old Testament. Shalom and welcome to Prophets of Awakening, and welcome to our evening Sabbath class. We're going to do our usual, which is a moment of silence, evening Sabbath prayer, Psalms. We're going to do some current events, some need to know information, and then we do the Q&A. Then we go into the reading of the scriptures, which is out of the book of Judges, and we'll close out. Okay. So this moment of silence is for the Lord of hosts, and our Creator, Lord of Yahweh, and all that they're doing to bring about our prophesied deliverance. Okay. Oh Lord, I pray unto the Lord my God, and we make our confessions. O Lord, the great and dreadful God, keeping covenant and mercy to them that love thee and to them that keep thy commandments. O Lord, righteousness belongeth unto thee, and unto us the confusion of face, as it is this day, to the men of Judah, to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and unto all Israel that are near and that are far off, through all the countries where thou hast driven us, because of our trespass that we have trespassed against thee. As it is written in the laws of Moses, all this evil has come upon us in the land of our captivity, here in the Americas, Caribbeans, Great Britain, and Africa. O Lord, according to all thy righteousness, I beseech thee, let thine anger and thy fury be turned away from thy city Jerusalem, and thy people, and thy holy mountain. O Lord, hear this prayer, and cause thy face to shine down upon thy sanctuary and thy people for your sake. O Lord, open thine eyes and incline thine ears to hear and behold our condition. O Lord, hear. O Lord, forgive. O Lord, hearken and do and defer not for thine own sake, O my Lord, for thy people and your land needs you desperately at this hour. Peace be unto you. Okay. I'm going to read the Psalms right quick. I'm going to read Psalms 2. It says, why do the heathen rage? Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder, cast away their cord from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh, the Lord shall have them in derision. Then shall he speak unto them in his wrath, and vex them in his sore displeasure. Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. The Lord hath said unto me, thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the utmost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron, and thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings, be instructed, ye judges of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear, and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled, but a little, kindle but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. So this is one of those verses where the Edomites are tricked off once they concocted JC. So it says right here, this the first place they run, they'll say, if he don't have the son, why would he say in Psalms chapter 2, verse 12, kiss the son, lest he be angry, and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. So you go back, like you need to, every time you're dealing with a Christian, you got to go back and, back up 5 or 6 verses. It ain't hard to do, and you'll see what these clowns have done. So I'm in Psalm chapter 2, I'm starting at verse 1. Why do the heathen rage, and the people imagine the vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointing. So we see what this anointing, we're going to see what this anointing is in a minute. Saying, let us break their bands asunder, cast away their cords from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh, and the Lord shall have them in derision. Then shall he speak unto them in wrath, and vex them in his displeasure. Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill in Zion. I will declare the decree. The Lord hath said unto me, thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee. Ask me, and I shall give thee the heathen for inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for possession. So let's answer that, because the anointed in verse 1, the king in verse 6, and the son are the same person, right? So let's look at it. I'm in 2 Samuel, right? First Samuel chapter 16. First Samuel chapter 16. Okay, so let me get it. Where was it? First Samuel chapter 16. Okay, excuse me on that. Okay, chapter 16. First Samuel verses 1 says, the Lord said unto Samuel, how long wilt thou mourn for Saul, like the first king of Israel, seeing I have rejected him, reigning over Israel? Fill that horn with oil. Go, I will send thee to Jesse, the Bethlehemite, and I have provided me a king. This the king in right here, that's in Psalms chapter 2. In Psalms 2, right? It says, I have provided me a king among his sons. And Samuel said, how can I go if Saul hear it, he will kill me. And the Lord said, take a heifer, right, with thee, and say, I am come to sacrifice to the Lord, and call Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show thee what thou shalt do, and thou shalt anoint unto me him whom I name unto thee. And Samuel did that which the Lord spake, and came to Bethlehem, and the elders of the town trembled at his coming, and said, cometh thou peaceably? And he said, peaceably I am come to sacrifice unto the Lord. Sanctify yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice. And he sanctified Jesse and his sons and called them to the sacrifice. And it came to pass when they were come that he looked on Eliab and said, surely the Lord anointed is before him. But the Lord said unto Samuel, look not on his countenance or on his height, or his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord said it not, see it not as a man seeth. For a man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh upon the heart. Then Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass before Samuel. And he said, neither have the Lord chosen this. Then Jesse made Shema to pass by. And he said, neither have the Lord chosen this. And again Jesse made 7 of his sons to pass before Samuel. And Samuel said unto Jesse, the Lord hath not chosen these. And Samuel said unto Jesse, are there all thy children? And he said, there remaineth yet the youngest. And behold, he keepeth the sheep. And Samuel said unto Jesse, send and fetch him, for we will not sit down till he come hither. And he sent, and he brought him in. Now he was ruddy and with of a beautiful countenance, and goodly to look to. And the Lord said, arise, anoint him, for this is he. And Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brethren. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon David. From that day forward, Samuel rose up and went to Mali. So we see right here who this anointed one is in in Psalms 2, right here. This anointed right here. It said, anoint him, for this is my king, right? So when you go back to Psalms 2, it says in verse 2, the kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, David. We just read where he told Samuel to go and anoint him. This is my king. Then we go down to verse 6. Ye have set my king, this is the Lord talking. Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill, David. Then he tells David in verse 8, ask me. And I should, well, he tells him in verse 7, I will declare the decree. The Lord hath said unto me, thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee. So we see right here, David is the son, the begotten son. Ask of me in verse 8, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. And that's why he turns around and say in verse 12, kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. So we see how if you don't have no understanding, you can get tricked off. But there ain't no Jesus. Say, anybody got any comments on it? Shalom. Anybody got any comments on it? Okay. So we'll keep moving. Okay. Do some current events.
The COVID 19 pandemic and the Ukrainian crisis have shown us that the EU was too slow to understand the influence of the United States, Russia, and China on its socio-economic unity. To deal with these concerns, EU leaders agreed in June 2022 to launch a 44 nation European political community called the EPC. The EPC was inaugurated in Prague on Thursday after French President Emmanuel Macron first pitched the European political community as a response to Ukraine's war crisis. So, why a 44 nation European political community now? Emmanuel Macron saw it coming long ago. Macron feared that European nations might get divided within the EU as the US and Russia fight it out over the bloc. Macron had said, "It's our historic obligation to respond to that today and to create what I would call a European political community. This new European organization would allow European democratic nations adhering to our core values to find a new space for cooperation on politics, security, energy, transport, infrastructure investments, and the movement of people, especially the young." Macron stressed that the EPC is the future of the European security order. The French president said, "The EU, given the level of its integration and ambition, cannot be in the short term the only means of structuring the European continent." Macron wants to pause Ukraine's bid to EU membership and therefore said that it would take decades for Ukraine to become a formal part of the EU. He laid out his vision wherein Ukraine and a post Brexit Britain could take part in European affairs without officially joining the EU. As we know, the US preserves a large part of its troops in Germany and other European countries in the form of NATO. Macron, speaking alongside German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, took shots on the US, saying, "We must find a political form that enables to dock to Europe some states that share the same values and geography and to build together a political coordination, probably some form of solidarity in terms of security, and which are not the same as NATO." Macron's "not the same as NATO" remark is not a hasty and abrupt idea. In 2019, Macron laid out a 10-year vision for the EU. He said that the EU must have an effective defense policy and an integrated energy market. This was aimed at phasing out the USA's deeply entrenched influence in Europe. Since dependency on the US and Russian energy is ultimately a risk for Europe's energy and economic security, Macron pushed for building new generation nuclear reactors. He said that the crisis in a war can be negated through nuclear and renewable energy. When blamed for his call for a strategic dialogue with Russia, Macron said, "My position is not pro Russian or anti Russian, it is pro European." Essentially, the European Union is redundant in the eyes of Macron and does not represent Europe any longer. Many seem to agree with him, which is why 44 nations have agreed to be a part of the EPC, including the United Kingdom. The UK had left the EU, leaving a big mess behind, but is now slowly aiming to re enter the European sphere.
Okay, so what you're looking at is these European nations busting up with all the drama that's going on. They busting up, and now they coming up with a whole new. The European Union is dissolving. They're coming up with 44 nations called the BBC. But what you look at, if you was looking at that image, of all European nations, all Anglo-Saxons, they scrambling. One side dropping the bomb on them, so they scrambling. You're looking at the waning days of that. Okay, shalom, bro. So yeah, they scrambling. So that's a good sign. Okay, got one more.
Answer from the BBC. I have a quick question for President Kagame. As chair of the Commonwealth, I wonder what your priority will be, especially in terms of upholding the values of democracy and human rights, given that there's been a lot of scrutiny on your country and the record of your government, and critics have been pointing out the number of opposition leaders and journalists who are in prison. I wonder what your leadership of this organization is going to look like in the face of that.
Right. I think checking of facts is a serious problem with the very institutions we should have relied on to inform the public, the general public, the world, about some of these facts. Or whether the facts themselves or the interpretation of some of the things that actually happen. Now, let me start with the issue of values. Who defines the values? Or who doesn't actually have values? When people talk about values sometimes, there's one part of the world that has assumed the sole responsibility and the monopoly of defining values. So the rest of us have no values. We've just to keep learning from these ones who define the values. And by the way, the danger also is, it doesn't matter how long you take learning, you will never qualify. You will just always be branded somebody who has no values or who comes from a place where there are no values. Now, but should actually should be in prison now. She was in prison, she committed a crime for which she was tried in the court of law. She was actually sentenced and imprisoned. The government, the president, under the prerogative of the masses, president has that powers. Actually, this woman was released from prison before she served her full sentence. And it wasn't because she was not guilty or whatever. I'll tell you something else which shows double standards, which lead to these things you were asking. She was tried on the basis of evidence that was provided by European countries working with our own justice system. You see, it wasn't just done here, it was done between us and some European countries who provided evidence, corroborating with the evidence we had, and us on the basis of which she was tried and sentenced and put in prison. Now, but some people decide to make that person an angel of freedom and democracy and something like that. Where does it come from? But she's out there, she's not in prison. But this I'm saying, she should actually be in prison if we hadn't just forgiven her. Okay, we forgive her to be out of prison so that you can pick her and pump her and praise her. Okay, that's fine. If that serves, but I wish it was serving something good for the country. That's okay. Then you have another person whom the very people I was referring to picked, praised, made her a celebrity, him a celebrity, made the hero of, made him a savior of, but I don't know even what he saved. Now, when he faces justice, there is evidence, irrefutable evidence. He was tried in the court of law publicly. Nobody questions the facts on which the evidence is based. But then say, no, you see, this one is, a critic of the president.
So what you're looking at is the pendulum changing. In so many words, he's saying that these African countries, they having First of all, it ain't been you never really seen no press conference like that in Africa in that magnitude. That's where they at. So they're not even they don't want to acknowledge the European countries no more. So you see Africa rising and Europe falling right in front of our eyes with something we never imagined. But the Africa is rising and European is falling. And we're gonna see in this next video that I'm gonna play how I was telling you about how these European people, these so-called royal families, how they got all their wealth through the banking system that Esau concocted, which is contrary to the law. They got their wealth contrary to the law. You got to understand that. So these countries now, right after Queen Elizabeth passed away, they getting away from them. They don't want to deal with them no more, because Queen Elizabeth herself owns 16 countries, whole countries that's operating, got presidents and everything, but subject to her. So right after she passed, they starting to break away. Uganda, one of them. Okay, so let's check that out. Shalom, Mike. Okay, here we go. There's some need to know information. Okay.
Power and influence aren't exactly very easy to come by. Believe me, it takes time, effort, and a healthy amount of under-the-table dealings to achieve these things. Or if you're lucky enough, you'll be born into a family that already has. Over the centuries, these particular families have managed to accumulate insane amounts of money, power, and influence, subsequently using it to place themselves in very convenient and important parts of society. These families are so powerful, they've basically won the economic game and done a tiny bit of shaping society to their whims. These are some of the most powerful families in the world. Rothschild family. If you know anything about conspiracy theories, then you've certainly heard about the Rothschilds, from the wildest to the most plausible. One way or the other, the Rothschilds had something to do with it. I mean, if the first page of Google is to be believed, the Rothschilds have done everything from controlling every central bank.
So just a little quick interruption. So, like I was saying before, you notice how when they bring forth the truth, all of a sudden the tone of their voice changes. It's sarcastic when they start talking about conspiracy theories. It's not hard. It's hard to believe, you know. And then when they have some kind of discovery dealing with records, just what the evidence said is missing. They can't read it, or you know, the evidence decayed in that particular spot. They ain't there. Okay.
In the world, to even controlling the weather, with an insane combined net worth of $400 billion. Who are the Rothschilds really? Alien emissaries? Or just some incredibly rich people? Well, what they are is an international banking and finance dynasty of German descent. They rose to international prominence in the early 18th century and subsequently established operations all across Europe. They were even elevated to nobility by the Austrian government. So yes, they are just incredibly wealthy. But you probably guessed that. The Rothschilds' historical rise to power started with Meyer Rothschild, whose keen talent for finance eventually led him to become a prominent member of the global banking industry and installed his 5 sons in the financial capitals of Europe. They successfully adapted to the Industrial Revolution during a rise in economic growth throughout Europe, landing themselves an oligopolistic position in the world trade of oil and metals. The Rothschilds were so powerful they could loan money to entire countries. Their clientele wasn't your everyday wealthy lord. No, they were out there loaning billions to entire governments. In 1825, they supplied enough coin to the Bank of England to avert a market liquidity crisis. They granted loans to France after its defeat by Prussia, and they granted a £4 million loan to the British government after just being asked a few hours prior. They were, simply put, just rolling in that money. These days, the family has taken a more low-key approach to being a financial superpower. while spending their wealth by donating vast quantities of art to charity and generally avoiding conspicuous displays of wealth, especially after their surrealist party back in the 70s that'll haunt my dreams forever. The Rothschild family are without a doubt extremely powerful, influential, and cloaked in mystery, hence all the conspiracy theories. But whether or not they're responsible for the assassination of JFK or are fighting against climate change is for the conspiracy theorists to decide. The Windsor family.
Home, a simple word that inspires 1,000.
One of the most popular and most influential groups of royals in the entire world, with family branches that have stretched all across Europe and influence that quite literally stretches the entire globe. If that doesn't make you want to find your own Windsor heir to marry, wait till you find out just how wealthy the latest generation of British royalty is. Prince William and Kate Middleton's 3 kids, George, Charlotte, and Louis, aren't just living a life of unparalleled luxury.
So remember this, we had a conversation about how young those kings was in Israel, and the wealth that was surrounding them, those Israelites. Well, guess what? You go 3, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. This is what they done to us. They done flipped it.
They're making bank, too. Prince George is already worth $2.8 billion, and his sister Charlotte is worth $4.3 billion. They're already making 10 digits, and neither of them is 10. Simply mind-blowing. The Windsors aren't just sitting at the top of a country with a GDP of $2.7 trillion. Their influence spreads far beyond Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, and England, reaching every continent on Earth. Yes, including Antarctica. Some of these countries include the South Pacific Island of Tana, where the Duke of Edinburgh was considered a literal god, and Canada, where the portrait of Queen Elizabeth is featured on their $20 bill. That might sound a little strange to you, but did you know Queen Elizabeth technically owns 1/6 of the Earth's land? Of course she's going to show up on a few bills. The Queen is technically the largest landlord in the entire world, owning more than 6 billion acres of land, and is technically the head of state of 16 countries. These countries are part of what's known as the Commonwealth realm, and are some of the wealthiest places in the world, like Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, which would technically make the Windsor family worth an estimated $25 trillion. Now that is a lot of power. The Windsors might be running a constitutional monarchy these days, but that doesn't diminish just how influential they are. I mean, people have actual tattoos of the royal family on them. I'm talking about permanent drawings of Queen Elizabeth on their bodies. You can only wish you were that popular. And what's popularity if you can't back it up with ridiculous amounts of wealth? The Windsors sure can. They own several castles, mansions, and estates, all of which are incredibly expensive, and they didn't even need to buy most of them. There's also the Royal Collection, an art collection owned by the British royal family, which is one of the largest art collections in the world, with over 7,000 paintings, 40,000 watercolors and drawings, and about 150,000 old master prints. They've got historical photographs, tapestries, and the crown jewels worth $4 billion. Pretty much everything you could consider art can be found in this collection. Some of the Windsor's luxurious royal holdings include Kensington Palace, which has an estimated worth of $630 million, and Buckingham Palace, which is worth $4.9 billion. One of the most expensive and popular buildings in the world, and they just casually live in it. Koch family. What do you get when you mix oil money, time, and a healthy bit of generational wealth? Well, you get the Koch family, a dynasty of oil billionaires that have shaped both the economic and political landscape of the United States. With a current net worth of $100 billion, the Koch family started their rise to power with a company that had a mouthful for a name. It was originally called the Wood River Oil and Refining Company, until it was thankfully renamed to Koch Industries in honor of Fred Koch, one of its earliest members. It was run by his 2 sons, David and Charles Koch, affectionately referred to as the Koch brothers, after which millions upon millions of Coca-Cola jokes were made. That is until David passed away in 2018 at the age of 79. Now, to give you an idea of why the Koch family is on this list, Please note, Koch Industries is currently the second largest privately owned company in the United States, and currently the sixth largest in the entire world, raking in a yearly revenue of $115 billion. Oh, but Koch Industries isn't just rich, it's prolific as well. They've acquired so many companies and have so many subsidiaries. They effectively do everything now, and I'm not even exaggerating. These acquisitions were incredibly smart as well. Some of them include the $22.5 billion purchase of Georgia Pacific, one of the world's largest manufacturers and distributors of paper. They provide a wide variety of household products under popular names like Brawny, Angelsoft, and Vanity Fair. They also spent $7.5 billion to purchase Molex, an electronic components manufacturer. And they work with the National Guard of the United States as well. That's paper, electricity, and protection. Whatever kind of apocalypse is coming, the Koch family is ready. Not only are they wealthy, they also invest a non-significant amount of their wealth into making sure the political landscape of the country is exactly the way they want it. It turns out you don't have to be royalty or hold any political office for that matter to get a few politicians to speak your language. If there's one thing the Koch family is really passionate about, though, it's real estate. They purchased a multi-billion-dollar, 63-story, 4,000-unit hotel and casino on the Las Vegas Strip, and that was just the start. They plan to buy more hotels and hospitality assets. At this point, they're just trying to fill a bingo card of industries they can take over, I think. The Walton family. Here's
Okay.
insane net worth of $169.7 billion and own a corporation so massive it has a net worth larger than some countries' GDP, yet nobody really talks about them. Do you know what a Walmart is? I know what a Walmart is. We've all seen the memes, but did you know that there are approximately 10,500 Walmart stores in 24 countries worldwide, which employ about 2.2 million people? Well, I certainly didn't. Walmart was founded by Sam Walton in 1962. Over the years, it eventually grew into the world's largest company by revenue, earning over $540 billion. Consequently, turning the Waltons into the richest family in the United States. Let me tell you, Walmart is so powerful, its very existence in a community is enough to destroy whatever competition stands in its way. If a Walmart opens up in a small town, about half its retail trade will be gone in a few years, fell to the feet of this retail giant. Naturally, Walmart's customer size is frankly ridiculous. Thanks to its low prices and wide range of products, it appeals to virtually everybody and serves approximately 220 million customers every week. The Waltons have had more than one successful venture, though. You don't get over $100 billion by being a one-trick pony, after all. One of these ventures was known as Sam's Club, a chain of warehouse clubs that sold groceries and general merchandise. It operated 600 warehouses and raked in profits up to $57 billion. Even their charitable foundations are a hit. The Walton Family Foundation has managed to take on environmental issues and education, spending $1 billion on the latter. The Waltons have used their vast wealth to dabble in a bit of politics as well. The political leanings of the Waltons aren't exactly one note, though. Different heirs to the Walmart throne have paid large sums of money to different sides of the political aisle, trying their darndest to influence policies, like a really boring season of The West Wing. Morgan family. This family's rise to international prominence started in the late 19th century, with perhaps the most famous Morgan of them all, John Pierpont Morgan. That guy in all the documentaries about early industrializing America, born to be a banker, J.P. Morgan would follow in his father's footsteps and get embroiled in the financial sector, becoming one of the most famous bankers in the world, eventually immortalized by one of the most powerful financial institutions in the United States, J.P. Morgan and Company. J.P. Morgan didn't build the first billion-dollar company by banking alone, though. In the late 1890s, he turned his attention to the steel industry. He developed an alliance with the president of Carnegie Steel and purchased the company for $480 million, an amount which, at the time, was more than the U.S. federal government's entire budget. You gotta spend money to make money, and boy, did he make money.
Okay. So you see now, that's about 100 people maybe at the most with that, and they got on all the money in the world. That don't add up. So it's got to be some very sinister stuff going on for them to accumulate all that wealth in one spot. And we're just looking at the law, statutes, and judgments, and that going through some of them when we was on Clubhouse, and they told you that you're responsible for your brother. You don't leave them starving. You always making preparation for them to provide for them too at the same time. And so you can't be thinking like that and acquire that kind of money. You know, it's got to be doing some real devilish and wicked ass stuff to get that kind of money. Okay, a lot of people got to be hoodwinked or bamboozled and lied to in order to get to that point where you got that kind of wealth. Okay, anybody got any comments on that? Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read out of Judges. Where I was at this morning, something I left out, and then I'm gonna close out. Okay, it's I was in I'm gonna show you the reason why that the purpose. Judges, when you understand what's going on in the scriptures, the book of Judges, these judges was brought about what they call deliverers, because of this is a time in between Joshua coming into the land of Israel and occupying the land of Israel, and then them getting their first king, Saul. And it was because of the what went on with these judges. And I brought some of them forth this morning, but I'm gonna read what happened in the process that I got to that, and I'm gonna close out. So it says in I showed you that Benjamites didn't drive out all the Canaanites like they're supposed to. These Canaanites are descendants from the giants, from when the giants came and started interbreeding with women. They're not as tall as the original giants because of the Most High had those Michael and Gabriel come down and bind those original giants. So they took away the source. So they started getting smaller. But they still giants, but they're not as big as the original ones. Like the three sons of Koch that we talked about. They was huge. So anyway, I'm in chapter 2, 16 through 23. And it says, it's the ministry of the judges. Nevertheless, the Lord raised up judges, which delivered them out of the hands of those that spoiled them. He had to raise these judges up because Israel was so wicked and disobedient. And yet they would not hearken unto their judges, but they went a whoring after other gods and bowed themselves unto them, and they turned quickly out of the way which their fathers walked, in obeying the commandments of the Lord, but they did not so. And when the Lord raised them up judges, then the Lord was with the judge and delivered them out of the hands of their enemies all the days of the judge. For it repented the Lord because of their groanings from by reason of them that oppressed them and vexed them. And it came to pass when the judge was dead that they returned and corrupted themselves more than their fathers, and followed other gods to serve them and to bow down unto them. They ceased not from their own doings, nor from their stubborn ways. And the anger of the Lord was not against was hot against Israel. And he said, because that this people have transgressed my covenant, which I commanded their fathers, and have not hearkened unto my voice, I also would not henceforth drive out any from before them of the nations which Joshua left when he died. So he deliberately stopped driving them out, knowing they're going to vex him, right? 22, that through them I may prove Israel, whether they will keep the way of the Lord to walk therein as their fathers did keep it or not. Therefore the Lord left those nations without driving them out hastily, neither delivered he them in the hands of Joshua. So that was the reason right here. He kept them there, right? So we're going to pick that up in, let me get it. Okay, so it says, chapter 3 says, the nations left to test Israel. Now these are the nations which the Lord left to prove Israel by them, even as many as Israel had not known all the wars of Canaan, only that the generations of the children of Israel might know, to teach them war at the least, such as before knew nothing thereof, namely 5 lords of the Philistines, and all the Canaanites, and all the Sidonians, the Hivites that dwelt in Mount Lebanon, on the Mount Baal Hermon, until the entering into Hamath. So a question was asked this morning: why would I say Lucifer was Baal? And refer back to uh, Genesis, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This is one of the reasons right here. Notice how they got Baal and Hermon connected together. We know Baal is another name for Lucifer, which is Lord, and Hermon is the mountain where these 200 angels came down on. They ain't calling it Baal Hermon just for the hell of it. There's a reason behind it. So, verse 4, and they were to prove Israel by them, to know whether they would hearken unto the commandments of the Lord, which he commanded their fathers by the hands of Moses. And the children of Israel dwelt among the Canaanites, the Hivites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. 5 nations left. Remember, Judah drove out 2 nations, 6, and it was 7 in the beginning. It says, and they took their daughters to be their wives, just what he said don't do, and gave their daughters to their sons, and served their gods. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and forgot the Lord their God, and served Balaam and the groves. See that? So let's look at it. Verse 6. And they took their daughters to be their wives, and took their daughters to be their wives, and gave their daughters to their sons, and served their God. This is where Saul came from. Saul ain't came on the scene yet. That's why when they told him, we want a king, Saul was chosen. Saul was head and shoulders taller than any other Israelite. So we see now why. So go back to the other story I told you about Jacob and Esau. You think Esau red and hairy, totally the opposite of Jacob, just for the hell of it? No, Jacob ain't none of his. Isaac ain't none of his daddy. But let that ferment. Anyway, so I showed you this morning too how that these men of Belial, which is because the same situation right here, came up and doing it in the tribe of Benjamin, and inquired of the guy. They wanted to sodomize him. They was homosexuals. They wanted to know why the man wouldn't let him come out of the house. So the man gave him his daughter, and they raped and beat her and did everything under the sun to her till she died. By the morning time came, she had crawled to the door and died. And the Levite came out and took her back to his homeland and cut her up in 12 pieces, and gave to each one of the tribes to let them know what was going on, and that they needed to judge that situation, needed something to be done with it. But my point is that I'm trying to get you to see is it's not no coincidence all this coming out of Benjamin. It's because they didn't drive these people out. So you have to ask yourself, if that was going on then, how much more so that we didn't intermingle? Like I said, we're not paying no attention to the traits and the things that stick out, that you're around, that you're not understanding. It go all the way back to this. When we start intermingling, you are woolly hair, your hair standing up, reaching up to the sun, dark complected, piercing brown eyes, And then you look over here and you see somebody fire red hair, freckles on their face, and they don't look nothing like you. But these clowns telling you y'all related. You ain't related. You ain't related no kind of way. And you crazy as hell if you believe it. So anyway, with that being said, you know, like I said, this information right here, I kind of had left it out because I had put out so much information I wanted to kind of bring the rest of it in tonight. So we see that, like I said, they didn't drive them all out. And just like now, we was brought over on slave ships with a whole nother nation of people that we ain't had no connection with, and our women was being raped and mutilated and impregnated, and we're in the same situation now. But that's not being referenced. When you're trying to write and divide the scriptures, you ain't referencing that. And then you're not understanding our condition. A lot of our condition is the breeding that went on. That's a lot of our condition. But we ain't dealing with that. Okay? So, like I said, anybody have any comments before I close out? Everybody good? Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I just want to just say that I had a ball today, 3 classes, and I'm gonna see everybody on Tuesday for our advanced Bible study, and we'll pick it up from there. So with that, I want to say shalom, and like I said, I had a ball today. Shalom.
Shalom.